If you talk to high performers, athletes and artists and inventors, and they go into these concentrated states where they do the thing that makes them famous, the thing that changes the world, and they all talk about it in very similar ways called flow.
That's Steven Puri, former Hollywood executive turned founder of the Sukha company, where he helps creatives enter into a flow state.
We are all on the river paddling ourselves forward, but if you align your boat with the current, you go faster, you go further. The river magnifies your efforts. And that's what these people have figured out how to do consistently.
From the science behind flow to the practical techniques you can use to enter into it consistently, Steven shares how high performers have trained their brain to do extraordinary work, and you can too.
We all have something great inside us. Are you going to get it out or not?
This is Steven Puri. Steven, somebody's sitting next to you on an airplane and they look over casually and say, "What do you do for a living?" How do you choose to respond to that?
I help people do something with their lives.
Do people have follow-up questions? Because it's a pretty big...
I think one of the most interesting things is when someone asks you a question about, like, what do you do? Oh, I help remote workers be happier. I help people do something with their lives. The ones who are interested will ask a follow-up question that gets into something, and the ones that aren't actually listening, they just sort of said it like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, people say that without actually wanting to know how you're doing. They don't ask a follow-up question. So it's a great way to just be like, let's have a little fork in the road. Do you care or not?
Yeah. Why is your work meaningful to you?
I have a fundamental belief, and I know this is not shared by everyone, but I have a fundamental belief that we all have something great inside us. And the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? If I can look back at the end of my life and say, oh, I helped people do the thing, or I helped leaders empower their teams to do the thing that they're capable of, like that's something I'll be proud to talk to my kids about, something I'll be proud to have on my tombstone, probably more than, worked on Die Hard 5 or, he's a joke in Star Trek 11, something like that.
I'm putting words in your mouth. I'm not sure if you've actually said this. It's just kind of how I've read into your story, listening to some of your other interviews and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
It seems as though you weren't captured by the work you were doing before. Maybe you found a lot of sense of purpose and so forth. Is that true? Because it seems like, when you say, hey, I've worked on these different sets and produce these kind of films or help, create them.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like everybody's dream and what would be like a big end goal. And I'm reading it to feel like it wasn't enough for you. It wasn't purposeful.
Well, I think things evolve the same way people on their wedding day don't necessarily think about getting divorced,
Yeah.
And when I got into film, there were some films that I had worked on that I thought actually were more meaningful. Like I produced the effects and the titles for Mel Gibson on Braveheart. And I remember when that script came into us, we had a digital production house, right? So we're doing computer generated images for film. Mm-hmm. So your job, your deal flow was getting scripts of movies that had just been greenlit before anyone else, reading them and then calling the director and being like, we could do that for you, right? BD, sales, right? So it was very hard to get the script for Braveheart. It was under lock and key at Paramount and Fox, but you have friends. And I remember taking it home on a Tuesday night or maybe Wednesday night with like 3 other scripts. And invariably, those kind of movies that are like $100 million budget and up, they're usually pretty bad on the page, They're written around the visual effects. They're written around the villain and the plot. They're not really great character stories. And I remember looking at Braveheart and it was like 160, 180. It was like very long. Comedy is usually 90 pages. Right. Drama is usually like 120. And this was like 160, 80. And I remember thinking, it's Tuesday night. This is my life. I couldn't go to sleep until I finished it. I was up until 2 in the morning. And it was a movie that was deeply about something. No matter how you feel about Mel today, obviously, he and I don't have a relationship now. We did years ago. when I was working for him, essentially. But the movie was deeply about something. And the people around that script, we all felt like we were doing something meaningful. The people might see this and be inspired in their life to stand up for freedom and, resist tyranny. And I don't know, I could say that about Die Hard 5 or The Wolverine or some of the movies. As my career evolved, the film industry evolved. And, you can complain about every movie being put out as Avengers 19, or it's the prequel to Maleficent, or it's the spin-off of some Lucasfilm side character. Yeah, but people vote with their dollars. The studios just make what made money last year. So do I look at those films and feel deeply that they're making a dent in the world? No, but there was a time when I did.
I think it takes a lot of courage to leave an industry like that when you've done some really cool.
Let's not project onto me more nobility than there is. Let me be honest. My boss at Fox, who is the chairman of Fox Films Entertainment, he and I hated each other.
Really?
Hated each other. That was not a hard decision. And I am sure that if he had a gun, he could have solved that problem for himself. When I was at DreamWorks, which that was a great experience. Like, it's the last studio run by a filmmaker. And there is an ethos there of go home tonight, try and make your project 1% better. And Fox, which at the time was a News Corp company, the ethos was go home tonight and try and make your projects 1% cheaper. Mm-hmm. It's not quite as inspiring. And I remember the sales pitch for me to leave DreamWorks was, the guy who became my boss, the chairman of Fox, said, listen, I'll double your salary at DreamWorks. And you have all these relationships with great writers who will not work at Fox because we're known for doing Alien versus Predator mashups and, that sort of movie. He said, if you come here, I'll give you a blank checkbook. You go try to bring your friends over here. And at that moment, I was, working with Alex Kurtzman and Bob Orsi, who wrote Star Trek 11, Transformers 1 and 2, Damon Lindelof of Lost, and Billy Ray, who God knows wrote so many things, David Ayer, like all these guys, Chris McQuarrie. And to his credit, he let me buy projects from him. Go, hey man, it's a new day at Fox. Come on, let's go work together and do that. After about a year and a half there, the original projects, like David Ayer was writing to direct an original for us. Like Billy Ray was doing the 24 adaptation. Chris McQuarrie is writing the Wolverine sequel, stuff like that. The only project he was really interested in was Die Hard 5, which was the worst script. It was a writer I had inherited. The executive who was there before me, sitting in the chair, had hired this writer who, after I left the business, was kicked out of the Writers Guild for plagiarism. That's the level of writer that was on the project. And it was awful. Wow. And it's the only thing Tom wanted to make. He would ask me about it every week. And finally I talked to him. I said, listen, I feel like I'm failing you because you wanted me to bring all these great writers here and to level us up. In reality, the only thing you asked me about is the worst script I have. And Tom, in a moment of candor, said, well, listen, my accountants have projected that if we shoot this with Bruce in the spring and release it next Christmas, it will make this amount of money by Sunday night. Doesn't matter if there's film in the can. He's like, just make it for less than that. And I know that we're in the black and I keep my job. He's like, that's all I care. Goodbye. And I was like, I need to get the F out of here.
What about that pissed you off so much?
Because the idea of waking up being 40, 50 years old, be like, let me go crank out the next meaningless bit of studio drivel for this company.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how wealthy you get, time is the one thing you can't buy more of. You can buy more food, more cars, more planes, more land, whatever. But you can never go back and get those years back. And I was like, this is not a good use of my life.
What did you decide to do instead?
So I know you care about the details more than most people have interviewed me. So I'll give you this, is I happen to be friends with the president of Warner Brothers, and he made me an offer to come over there. He said, when does your contract expire? On this date, whatever, in April. He's like, let's just make a deal. You come over. I want to make quality movies. And Greg, to his credit, this was the era of Chris Nolan making the Batman movies. It was a great era at Warner Brothers. And somehow, and I don't know who leaked it, it leaked to my boss at Fox. And out of spite, he renewed my contract so I couldn't leave. Which may sound
Damn.
like, oh, wow, so you're making a bunch of money and you're at the studio making these big movies. But in reality, I'm like, he just bought a year of my life to sit here and do garbage.
Wow.
And that sucked. It was completely his defensive move because he knew if I went to Warner Brothers and made good movies, people would be like, oh man, you lost Puri and now he's making big hits for Warner Brothers. He's like, I would rather just lock you up and be miserable than have you go
Damn.
somewhere else and be successful for them. And I was just like, gotta go. And that's when I thought the only other thing I know how to do is engineering. Because when I was a kid, I was a coder. It's how I got into digital effects because I knew computers.
Right.
And that's how I got into film. So I was like, you know what? The clock swung all the way back to 12. And I was like, let's find some problems that could be solved with engineering and raise some money, see if I can solve them. And that's how I got out of film.
And what was the first problem you set out to solve?
The first problem was Instagram was coming up at that time. And I thought it was a very, like the whole idea of selfie is very selfish. It's very much like me shouting at you, like, here's me on the street. Here's me eating an ice cream cone. And I was like, what if it was more of a we experience than a me? What if it wasn't just Instagram as me shouting selfies at you, but you see a photo of me at the concert, you could tap it and then share back to me, oh, I was at the concert, here are photos of us at the concert, like, and have a conversation. And raised about 3 million for that, got to about 60,000 monthly actives. And Snapchat, which was also in market at the time, launched Snapchat stories, and they just did it better than we did, and that was wildly embarrassing for me because a lot of friends in film were watching. They were like,
Yeah.
Puri left film to go do this tech company. No one does that. Why would you leave this glamorous business of film? And then it failed. And I felt like a loser. Yay, go me.
Then what happened?
I looked around for things I could do. I did a second startup. Happily, my investors in the first company, all except for one guy, everyone was like, what do you want to do next? We love working with you. Like, not every startup works. Like, give us something else you want to do because we'd like to work with you. One guy was a complete dick to me. He had put $10,000 in. He was the smallest investor in my company. And he was the only one who was like, well, can't you do something else? I don't want to lose my money. Can't you try something else? And I was like, honestly, no. Right? So went to the next company and worked on that for a bit. I helped a buddy launch a company. I'd moved to New York. And a good friend of mine from CA, which is a talent agency there, he saw what I'd done. He also saw the writing on the wall with film, where he's like, it's all just becoming sequels and prequels. He's like, this is not that interesting anymore. And he's like, I want to get out. Now everyone's gotten out of film, but the time is kind of early. So I helped him start his company, which he's still running, which is awesome. And helped him raise his seed round, which was about 2.25, I think. We raised for that. And then this idea came to me for SUKO.
Which is what?
You know what? It is a way for people to do the thing they're capable of. Like, the world is really distracting and set up in an unfair way. And I was like, how do you, sorry?
Unfair.
Yeah, it is unfair. Going back to the thesis where we started, which is my thesis that everyone has something great inside them. And it's just a question of like, are you going to get it out? Or are you going to die with it? Right? And in the world, the business model of the $1 trillion companies is steal your life. That's it, period, full stop. And 10 years ago, they tried to obfuscate that and be like, oh no, Zuckerberg would go testify in Congress. We're just here for grandmas to see their grandkids' videos, and do all this like dodging of the questions. And now they're totally straight up. You read their quarterly filings and they're like, yeah, this is how much of everyone's life we stole this quarter. And here's some new techniques we're going to deploy to steal more of everyone's lives next quarter. So in that tug of war for your life and you doing something, on one side of the rope, they're like $1 trillion companies whose entire model is they need your life to sell to advertisers. And they have the best engineers and best designers. On the other side of the rope, it's you pulling alone, being like, no, I want to do something with my life. And that's not a fair tug of war. So yeah, I don't view that at all is fair. So I want to give the people who raise their hand going, I'm not going to die with the great novel inside me or the company inside me or the restaurant or the whatever it is that you're going to create. Like if you refuse to die with that inside you, get your allies, just like in a movie, the top of the second act, first act, the world changes. Something goes wrong. Top of the second act is the little hobbit goes around the Shire and picks up the allies. These are the people I'm going to need in order to get to Mordor with the stupid ring, right? So
Right.
I want to be one of those allies. It's like, yeah, I actually have a book to write. I have a company to start. I have designs to do. I have an app to create.
And what was the solution you came up with?
Really simple. It's based around flow states. I'm not sure. I haven't heard an episode of yours where you talked about flow states. Have you? Did I miss it?
No, that's what I wanted to like dive in deep with you on. I'm
Oh,
super.
okay. I like the metaphor of diving in deep on the flow of the river. This is
Let's
good.
go. Yeah.
Um, so let me set the table for anyone listening, playing along at home or in their car, and they're like, I've heard of flow states, but I'm not exactly sure what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
Hungarian American psychologist, this guy Mihai Csikszentmihalyi,
Okay.
he had a thesis. He's like, if you talk to high performers in these wildly different disciplines, athletes and artists and inventors, and he's like, they go into these concentrated states where they do the thing that makes them famous, the thing that changes the world, and they all talk about it in very similar ways. And he's like, what's up with that? So he went off and researched that. And at the end of that research, he wrote a book called Flow, which is
Mhm.
the seminal work on this. It's from whence we get the term flow state. And I loved what he said. He said, I chose this word because it's the most beautiful metaphor for what I found. We are all on the river, paddling ourselves forward. But if you align your boat with the current, you go faster, you go further. The river magnifies your efforts. And that's what these people have figured out how to do consistently. Amazing, amazing book. It's an amazing concept of just how do you get into this flow state, this concentrated state, where you do your best work faster and distractions fall away. And at the end of it, you feel energized and in control of your day, as opposed to depleted and just like, oh, I'm exhausted. I need to go to
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it's about.
And were you aware of flow state prior to trying to solve this problem?
No. And I also,
Interesting.
the first time I experienced a flow state, I still didn't know it was a thing. I'd never heard of it.
Okay.
I was on a flight from Austin, where I am, to SF. And the next day I was going to meet with my team to like show them, this feature I wanted to build. And I thought, you know what, I'll get on the plane. I'll mock it up in Figma, blah, blah. We'll talk about it. Alaska runs that nonstop on that route. Captain's like, hey, really sorry. Wi-Fi is out. Wow. We took off, started working on my little design, and we started landing like 15 minutes later. And I was like, okay, something bad happened. An engine fell off. They don't want to tell us, but we're landing like in Dallas. We've been in the air like maybe 20 minutes, and they're not going to tell us until we get on the ground. I looked down, over 2 hours and 40 minutes had gone by. I had no conception of that. I couldn't tell you what my seatmate's name was. I couldn't tell you if the drink cart came by. But my designs were done, and I liked them.
Hmm.
And I had prepared myself for like, I don't know if you've ever done this, but, getting off the flight, running to the hotel lobby, grabbing a sandwich, going up to the room and finishing my designs for the morning. In reality, I was done. I called a buddy of mine. I was like, hey man, I have a free night in SF. Do you want to go have dinner? And that was really interesting to me. Be like, what just happened? Because I did great work in less time than I thought. And I feel up, not down. Later is when I understood, oh, there's a thing. And a lot of people have researched it and it's repeatable. And I was like, why did anyone tell me this in my 20s?
And it's repeatable. I think that's the interesting part because it's tempting to categorize flow state as something that is outside of yourself that just hits you every once in a while, like the muse or something like that. And it's interesting to think that we
Mhm.
could do certain things to, I don't know, predict if we go into flow state or increase the chances that we do.
The latter.
Um,
Yeah.
the latter, tell me more.
Yeah. So part of what Mihai did it's a lot like Prometheus. I'm going to run up to Mount Olympus, grab some fire, and bring it down for the rest of us. Here's how fires works, sort of thing. So and then there have been a number of people since, the Kotlers and the Newports and, people who have done research on specific parts of what he wrote to say, let's really understand this. So when Mihai wrote his book, he said, let me describe to you like what this experience is like. The people who do this, they seem to all have this experience of time falls away. They're not watching the clock. Distractions fall away. They're immersed in the work. They do it quickly. They do it at high quality. They feel energized and in control of their life at the end. And he said, there are some conditions precedent that they set that seem to help get into that state more reliably, right? Okay. So he and then subsequent research have talked about the kind of music seems to help, which we can talk about if you want. The kind of distractions that just like fall away and how to like get distractions out of your mental, view, right? He said, everyone who does this seems to believe the work is meaningful. I've never met someone who's in a flow state, like stapling papers or like mopping the floors or, you know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. He's like, generally you have to have something you think is meaningful to do. And people call it many different things. There's that Michael Jordan quote about when I'm in the zone, it's just me and the ball.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's like, call it the zone, call it whatever you want. You don't have to call it flow, but it's that sense of the world falls away. Like there aren't defenders. There's not a scoreboard. There are no fans. In this moment of me doing these magical things, it's just me and the ball, and there's a Picasso quote I always mangle about, I was up all night. I lost track of time. I don't think I peed or ate, but hey, like I think I finished Guernica tonight. That sense of being so lost in the work and feeling up, feeling in control of your life. I think that's pretty magical. So we can talk about some of the conditions that help you get into it, but it's once you've experienced it, it's kind of cool. And it takes a few minutes to get in. Like, again, research shows you don't sit down and go, I'm in a flow state. Even if you're good at it, it takes 15 to 23 minutes for your mind to kind of drop in. And if you get interrupted, it takes another 15 or 23 to get back. So you sort of have to say, oh, I'm going to set aside an hour to do my blog post, to design my app, to do this bit of code, whatever. You don't just do it in like 10-minute increments in between Zooms, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting you said that when you enter into this state that the work is meaningful. Why do you think that is?
Well, I can tell you a lot of the writing on this, because there have been great researchers, is that there is a part of that kind of concentration that only happens when you think it's worthwhile, So if you're doing something meaningless, it's hard for you to think that level of deep concentration is worthwhile for that activity,
What came up for me when you said that, maybe I'm reading too much into this, I have a tendency to do that, is if you think it's meaningful, which means that we have to be able to go into a flow state with a certain level of confidence in our work. Because I know a lot of creatives like, I suck, this isn't going to be anything, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So even if my script is meaningful and to me, and I want to do it, if I don't approach it like it will be meaningful, that probably could hinder my flow state.
Yeah, that is correct. And the interesting thing is when you do believe it's meaningful and you're doing it well, like one of the things Mihai wrote is he's like, you have to have skills that apply. It's not Michael Jordan trying to get into flow painting,
Right.
Or like Picasso throwing a basketball around, right? You have to actually have skills that apply, and you have to be challenged. Like I always joke about, it's not Michael Jordan playing an exhibition game at his kid's high school, right? It's Jordan in the NBA Finals doing the stuff that 30 years later is still on a highlight reel. Like that's when you have those moments of it's just me and the ball. And when you're there, even though the things you're doing may be done at a high level, like maybe you have skills that apply and you're doing it well, it feels effortless. Like the amount of effort goes down. Again, you've aligned your boat with the river, and the amount of paddling you're doing results in a greater movement forward because the river is carrying you. And once you've experienced that, it's magical.
What do you? We'll get into how to induce flow state, but I'm
Hmm.
curious. I'm just to understand you and your philosophy a little bit more.
Hmm.
What do you think that flow state is? Because I could see kind of two camps where maybe we think it's something spiritual, like aligning with God or source, or there also two could be a camp where maybe we don't understand our real potential and what
Hmm.
we actually are capable of as humans. And maybe it's a little bit of mixture of both, but
Hmm.
just philosophically, forget the research. What do you think that river is?
Well, you touched upon some ideas there around spirituality and religion and, self actualization. And I do believe, and this is just me,
Yeah.
that there is something more than just the existence of life. I
Hmm.
don't know that we're very good as humans as defining that thing and saying, oh, it is an old white man with white hair, in the heavens who's judging us, or it's Zeus, or it's, Juno, or I don't think
Right, right,
that
right,
we're
right.
great at understanding that. It's sort of like the way a dog howls at the moon, where the dog knows there's something magical about the moon, but it could never describe to you the moon well, but it knows that there's something there. I feel like that's our relationship to the concepts you bring up. And so, without being able to use the right language, which I acknowledge is a failure on my part, is I do think there's a spiritual aspect of executing the thing that you're here to do. Like
Yeah.
in Sanskrit,
Yeah.
there's this concept of Dharma, which you hear a lot in yoga,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is it's not karma. It's more like Dharma is more like your duty. Like, what is the thing that
Hmm.
you're here to do? And that has a lot to do even with how I named my company. It was just like, what is the
Right.
deeper concept of what it is we're doing? You know, I don't
Yeah.
think anyone's born to say, oh, I was here to create these Figma designs.
Right.
But I do think someone is deeply connected to, I'm here to create this application that allows a blind person to hear.
One more deep question, then we'll go into. I know y'all probably killing y'all are like, just tell me how to get into flow state, Heather. Shut up, Beck.
Just solve my problems now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong on this. You pulled kind of more a
You're
lot of
wrong.
Eastern thought and practice into this app and getting into flow state. There's I think from an anesthetic kind of language perspective, you can feel that on the app, but also too some of the things you pull in. Tell me if I'm wrong on any of this, but
No.
I'm curious with you come from a very ambitious, driven, produce
Mm-hmm.
world, and that's where we're living at here in the States. And I think it's interesting marrying uh, production with flow state because yes and amen to I'm here to create this app and write this script and write this book and we need to get it finished. And also too, there has to be a level of surrender, I think, to
Mm-hmm.
flow
Yeah.
where we're not necessarily putting
Spot
time
on.
limits on it.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting that you're kind of marrying both of those worlds and you're a driven, accomplished human who has operated well within a certain narrative and stretching that boundary a little bit more if I kind of bringing in this Eastern practice. I just want to hear your experience and kind of mindset entering into that. Or maybe you've been a yogi your whole life and I just don't know about
I
that.
have
But
not. I have not. And I'll tell you, I was not. Well, let me tell you a story. I think will illustrate this better than what I'm
yeah.
going to say. My ex girlfriend, who's still a very close friend of mine and Laura's, she was the director of YogaWorks when we were dating.
Okay.
So she's like, hey, I got you a class card with, I don't know, like 8 or 12 punches on it, right? And here's a yoga mat. Try this thing. I'm working at this company. You should do this. And I went, I did all the punches on the card, did not wake up the next morning and be like, oh my God, I can't wait to get back to YogaWorks and go do some more yoga, right? But
Right.
like a good boyfriend, check, I tried. And 2 years later, I was traveling in India. My father's from India. And we were with some family friends and traveling through what's sort of like the best analog in this country would be like Yosemite or Yellowstone, like one of those national parks that you go to once or twice in your life, you know?
Hmm.
And in this case, it's where the Royal Bengal Tiger Preserve is in this park called Ranthambore, right? So you go there. We got there in the mid morning. There were like 8 of us. And the deal that this beautiful hotel had made was that they told the interior minister they would not break the tree line, so you wouldn't be able to see the hotel. So the hotel was in fact just a series of yurts scattered in the forest, and you would just be told, like, walk down this flagstone path for 20 minutes, you'll see a yurt, that's yours, right? So
Hmm.
was walking down the path with my dad, saw a little guy in a clearing in his little white dhoti, standing alone. I was like, Dad, I'll meet you back at the yurt. I walked up to this guy. I was like, hi, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I lead a yoga practice. Totally serious. Like, it's not weird. He's standing alone in the middle of a clearing in a forest, right? He's like, I lead a yoga practice. I was like, okay, for whom? He's like, for anyone who comes along. And I'm like, and again, not breaking a smile, just like totally like normal. Like, yeah, okay, you want a burger? And I was like, okay, when? He's like, this afternoon. So I'm like, if I come back here after lunch with, my dad and our friends, you're going to be leading a yoga practice here. And he's like, yeah. So I go to lunch, and of course I'm excited. I'm like, oh my God,
Oh
I
yeah.
bumped into this guy. He's in the forest doing things. And everyone there was like, so like, oh, that's so cute. You should go. Like, we've done yoga. We're so good. Like, you
Right,
go do
right,
this.
right.
So I went back there, and he was standing there. Tall German
Mm.
guy was there standing in front of him. I walked up, and as I walked up, he said, let's begin. And he taught yoga in the middle of this forest in India. And at the end of it, I wanted to call Allie and be like, I didn't understand. I wasn't ready then. But I felt this
Mm.
clarity. And I was like, this is the gift she was trying to give me. I just didn't understand it. And that has been a part of my life. It is how I met Laura. I married the girl on the mat to my left. Not that day, later in Manhattan. Right? I didn't marry the German guy. But that's a huge part of our life, was
Wow.
that the lessons you take from yoga from every day, having an hour that's kind of a spiritual and a physical, sweaty practice of like, you can't really think about a lot off the mat when you're really deep in practice.
How do you maintain your level of ambition and drivenness, which is a gift, while also practicing and being mindful and allowing space for things like flow and presence and so forth? How do you marry those two practically day to day?
Oh, I feel very comfortable being ambitious because I think what I'm doing actually helps people.
Oh,
If
that's
what I
so
was
good.
being ambitious about was like, hey man, I'm running a crypto company, want to have my shit
That's
coin?
good.
I'm not sure that it would be the same thing.
That's so good. That's so good. That's so good. Uh, Presence and flow, would you say
Hmm?
those are interchangeable words or are there differences?
Oh, I think again, I'm not an expert on this, but I'll give you my humble opinion is that flow, as used in the Mihai sense of the word, since he sort of coined this idea, was and it continues to be very much about that state where you're so focused, like the world falls away and you feel energized, and it's like a beautiful sort of place to be. Whereas presence, I think, is really a lot about being intentional. Like in this conversation, I'm not focused on anything but the look on your face, the question you're going to ask, who might benefit from what we're saying, and I'm
Yeah.
giving you that attention because I want to be very present. Like this is my presence, as opposed to some Zoom calls you're on where like I'm half listening, I'm half doing work I have to do later because
Yeah.
this is not
Yeah.
really about me, but I got asked to be on this massive Zoom call. So,
Right. Right.
which I was on an hour ago. I was like, why did I say yes to this?
Been there, been there. Okay, so
Yeah.
getting into flow state. Let's say
Hmm?
um, I'm working on a short, which I am a short script.
Oh,
Um,
script for what? Hold on. What are you talking about?
just a short film, like a 10-minute piece that I'm
I've
working
heard
on.
about this film stuff.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, I know. But let
It's
me tell you,
everywhere. It's a
friend,
rage with all the kids. Okay.
it is, wild. It is wild. I pride myself, I think that I get shit done. I follow
Huh?
through. Um, I'm a doer, I'm an action taker, but it's been wild to observe myself
Huh?
over the past year BSing and making so many excuses and turning into
Procrastinating?
somebody who I'm not, and it pisses me off so bad because I'm like, "This isn't who I am." You know what I
Oh,
mean?
I
Um,
would disagree. You're discovering a
Tell
different
me.
part of who you are, right?
Oh,
There's some aspect of you. Let me share
okay.
you a story about me being vulnerable and broken, and then I want to go back to you, which is
Okay.
part of why I do what I do, why I created the Sukha website was I found like in the morning, I'd be like, oh, Heather, tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm going to get going. I've got to do my whatever, pay my tax, do something, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
9:15, I'd be returning some emails that were maybe not top priority, but just cleaning out my inbox, right? 9:30, I just have finished like scrolling the news to make sure I'm up on stuff. Did I need to do those things? No, it was just stalling. It was procrastination. And I was like, okay. So the effect of that I feel at the end of the day when I'm not done with stuff. That's when I pay the price for procrastinating in the morning on the
Yeah.
thing that I should be doing. And I asked myself, why do I do that? And it came down to I feel overwhelmed. And it was either overwhelmed looking at how long my to-do list is, which is almost paralyzing, where I'm like, I'm not going to do 17 things today. Ugh. Or overwhelmed because something on there was ridiculously large. It was like, rewrite the app, write my book, do the thing where I'm like, I can't even make a dent in that between now and the podcast with Heather. It was a lot about overwhelm.
Hmm.
What about you?
Well, I feel like there's selective overwhelm because what's interesting is I can get a lot of things done that a lot of people like. I'm so freaking consistent on
Mm-hmm.
content, making short reels and
Yep.
podcast and producing in that way. Um, I think that I feel capable of doing that and
Mm-hmm.
somewhat good at it. I need to get better for sure, but I've overcome a lot internally with that. But something new, like a new skill set, like writing a book or a script or developing an app and I'm learning how to code or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
there's a level of incompetence there, which maybe
Mm-hmm.
adds to overwhelm. But it,
Yep.
I can see like just the it's so wild, Fred. I'm like, I've shocked myself this year of like how much what you said, that side to myself that I haven't seen in a long time, and I thought I had overcome her.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So, as an example, here's Heather's dilemma, and we all have our whatever our thing is. If I'm like, all right, girl, you're going to get into a freaking flow state, which will be the title of this episode. Get into a freaking flow state. Let's say I do carve out mornings because that's my time.
See,
I
you
have
know your
nine.
chronotype. I love that.
I do. I
I'm the
do.
same way.
Mornings are for me. So I have 8:30 to 10:30 to work on this script. Besides going and sitting and making my caffeine, which I don't need, and opening my laptop and lighting a candle, which is what I normally do, dead silent in the house.
Mm-hmm.
What else do I do?
That you do?
Now, what to get into a flow state?
Oh, I thought you were saying, how else do you procrastinate? I'm like, I'm sure you have other ways.
No, what else should I do to get into a flow state? That's kind of like what I do currently, but it's not working.
Okay. So this is the prescriptive part of our little chat. So let me throw out a bunch of things, and the ones you think are most interesting, please pull them out and we're going to expound upon them. Okay.
Fun,
So
fun.
something you brought up there, but you didn't label it this, but it has a name, which is chronotype. For those playing at home, that's simply the concept that there are times of day you're better at doing certain things. Okay?
Mhm.
I saw this the first time demonstrated when I was in film. There's a famous screenwriter, Ron Bass, who is an attorney turned screenwriter, wrote Best Friend's Wedding, Rain Man, like a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He was infamous for not talking to his family in the morning. Like not even hello. He's like, I'm not the dad who's going to be like, who wants pancakes? Like who needs a ride to
Yeah.
school? He's like, when I talk to you, I can't hear my character voices in my head anymore. So he would get up, go to his office, and write for a few hours before he'd say hi to his wife. And then he's, I guess, a good dad. But there was that because he was intimately aware of his chronotype. He's like, that 5 to 9 a.m., that's where I write the
Mm.
words that are so good. Like Julia Roberts, Tom Cruise, Dustin Hoffman level people say yes to my script over the 20 other offers they have that day, right? So
Right.
he also knew in the afternoons, he was very good with the collaborative stuff. That's when he would do like studio notes and meeting with other writers and producers and stuff like that, right? So you brought up the idea of chronotype. That is one thing that you can track very easily. You don't need anybody's app to do it. Just for a week or so, kind of jot down what you do in the morning and afternoon and how you feel at the end of it. And
Mhm.
you'll start to see the smiley faces have a pattern. And then you just respect that pattern because, oh, that's how my brain works. Like you said about the morning, absolutely true for me.
Yeah.
And I used to think, like when I was in SF and doing more coding, I was like, oh, you know what? It's that culture of like late night, code until 4 a.m, hustle
Mhm.
thing. And I realized a lot of the code that I would write late at night may have worked, but it needed to be refactored. It was not my best work. But the stuff that I would do in the morning was generally oh, this is tight. This will work, right? So
Yeah, good.
there's that concept. Another concept is when you want to fall in, train your mind around physical spaces. I will give you another story about this. So back when I was doing visual effects and I'd done True Lies and Seven and a bunch of Carlos Way and a bunch of stuff, right? Braveheart. So I met Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin when they were going to do Independence Day. They had rented this, I guess, beautiful vacation villa down in Puerto Vallarta to write their scripts. So they would go down there for a month or two, write, come back. So Roland had his assistant rent this house. Roland, Joey, go rent the house. She came back and was like, it's rented. And around the office, this was like, oh my God, what are they going to do? I was like,
Mm.
talking to Dean, why is this so important to you? Like, you guys could go anywhere. He said, there's a room at this villa. I guess it's a white marble villa in the hills of Puerto Vallarta. He's like, the sun comes in the morning over the pool and it just inspires us. We don't think about our agents. We don't think about budgets for the movie or casting problems. We just think about what's the movie would want to see. And we write that.
Mm. Mm.
And so when Roland heard that it was booked, he called John Deemer, his entertainment attorney. He was an amazing guy. And was like, John, buy the house. By
Mm.
Monday, Roland owned a $5 million villa in Puerto Vallarta. The renters were gone. And they went down there and 6 weeks later came back with a script that would become the third highest grossing movie in film history. Right?
Wow.
It was that
Wow.
important to them that this space is where they could focus and do that work. And they trained themselves to it to the point of like $5 million expense. But it doesn't have to be you spend $5 million. Like when I was at DreamWorks with Alex Kurtzman and Bob Worsey, right? This is the Transformers 1 and 2, Star Trek 11, Eagle Eye era. When they got in crunch time, they would have their assistant rent a room at the Universal Hilton, which is across, we were on the little DreamWorks compound at Universal Studios. So across Lancashire, there's the Hilton. It is not a glamorous property by any measure. It is where you go with your kids the night before you go on the rides, right?
Right.
But for
Right.
them, there was something about that when they had like 2 weeks to finish the Transformers 2 draft. They would go there every day like it was their office and work from a hotel room. And I was like, they're making $1 to $2 million a script. They could go to Bali. They could go anywhere. But I realized they had met back when they were students. And I think for them, their mental association was dorm room. And it was Kurtzman on the edge of the bed with his laptop and Bob at the little desk. And back when they were scrappy writers who had to prove that they could do something great. And that's how they got their brains into that mode of flow, which was, we're going to go buckle down and do this now. So in your home, to bring this all back home, it is very easy if you work remotely to be like, oh, I'm in the kitchen in the morning. The light's beautiful. I just made breakfast. I'll work from here on my laptop. And then I'll go to my office upstairs. And then I'll go work on the sofa in the afternoon. And it's kind of chaotic for your brain. I used to do
Correct.
it. But when you say, you
Yes.
know what? Hey, this is the place where I write my blog. This is the place where I code. This is the place where I do my Figma. You watch, if you consistently do that there, not elsewhere, when you come to that space, your brain kind of falls in and goes, oh, right, okay, so we're going to
Mm.
do our design work now. And a
Mm.
lot of the noise falls away because your brain starts to understand, just the way with Roland and Dean, we're in this room. We're not talking about contracts. We're not talking about budgets. We're writing, We're in this hotel room. We're here to crank this out, That is another thing you can do for free. I know I just spoke for a very long time. I'm going to be quiet for a moment, let you talk.
I'm
There's more.
curious, you mentioned the airplane earlier when you entered into a flow state before you kind of knew what flow state was or
Yeah.
tried to whatever. I hear you, and I think it's really interesting and true.
Mm-hmm.
The sacredness of location, because like you said, it tricks your brain, and then also time of day. That was life changing when I learned that. Life changing. But it's interesting to me that neither one of those seem to play into this random flow state that you entered into a plane. So, what do you think it was about that particular situation? What is
Yeah,
it?
there is so much more. I just wanted to throw out a couple of prescriptive things because we were talking about, okay, let's bring this down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the plane. The Wi-Fi was out, which meant,
Hallelujah.
yeah, I'm just saying. So there wasn't the pick up the phone and check my WhatsApp real quick or look at my email or scroll in TikTok, And I'm just going to be honest, like I know I've noticed that when I'm working on something, I'm writing a blog post and I hit that moment of like, I need to rewrite this. It's just not working, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm
Yeah.
coding something and like the build keeps failing. My hand, like muscle memory, will reach for my phone and be like, well,
Yes.
let's just, quickly check what's in there. Maybe Heather, texted. It'd be fun to talk. And it's just this dopamine search of like, this is hard. Ooh, here's some free dopamine. And then that's never 1 minute of checking WhatsApp. That's a half hour of like, oh, I ended up opening YouTube Shorts, and and now it's
Uh-huh.
10:30, and right. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big one that was true on the plane where that was suddenly taken away from me. What did we do in Sukha to bring it, to what I built? Is we did a really simple thing, mainly because I get distracted. When you hit that play button in the main screen and the music starts and kind of like helps you stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there's a QR code that pops up. I can tap it with my phone, put my phone down. If I pick up my phone while I'm working, the little smart assistant says, "Hey, Steven, do you really need to be on your phone right now?" It's sort of like a friend sitting there. It's like, you're not going to finish on time if
Yeah.
you open up
Yeah.
TikTok. And sometimes it's all I need is that 1 second of, hey, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy
Yeah.
who's done? Or do you want to be the grumpy guy who's like, okay, Laura, we have to get back from dinner because I have to finish this stuff after dinner. And I hate that, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
things like that. There's like that distraction thing. Like we also built with websites. We give away a free Chrome extension. You can specify what websites distract you. And we give you like 20 obvious ones, but you can add to it or turn them off. If you open one, little pop-up, hey, is YouTube helping you right now? And you just get to choose, who do you want to be? That's all it is. If you want to keep using it, you can. It's not a blocker. It's just like a friend who's like, hey man, like,
Hmm.
do you want to finish on time? Up to
Hmm.
you. So things like that, I think were true on the plane that we tried to then make true every single time I go, okay, I have an hour and a half. I want to go build this new feature and I want to block out the world. You look
What
very
have
serious.
you I'm always very serious. No, I'm joking. W what have you learned about flow state that shocked you building this app that you weren't expecting?
You know, the feedback. And I did not, I expected it to be sort of like the plane thing where it's like, oh, that was super cool. I did more work and faster and feel kind of good. Okay, cool. Let's do it again. And one of the things that Mihai wrote about is he said, it seems like these high performers, that loop they get into of like, oh, I need to go do the thing, right? Is
Yeah.
there's some sort of feedback that they get almost in real time. So something Tony and I built was a live little productivity graph. So as you work, you get points every minute that you're focused, you're not on distracting website, you're not on your phone, you get points. You finish a task, you get points. You get points for doing a lot of things. Taking healthy breaks, you get points. Pick up your phone, lose some points. Open
Yeah.
ESPN.com, lose some points. And the thing I did not expect was we built it so you can scroll your cursor on the little graph and it'll give you a little pop-up saying, oh, in this 5-minute chunk, here's what you did. You finished a task. You
Mm.
opened YouTube. In this 5-minute chunk, right? We gave you the ability to look at your previous graphs and man, can you start to see your patterns.
Patterns. Yeah. Yeah.
Did not
Yeah.
anticipate that. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. You can sort of see like how you're doing today. But then when you go scroll through the past couple and you're like, man, at 40 minutes, I always reach for my phone. How do
Interesting.
I deal with that? Which in my case, what I did was I said, you know what? I'm just going to acknowledge that my little Pomodoro timer thing of 25 and 5 is not actually my rhythm. Mine is more like 40, 45. And then I'm going to give myself a 5-minute break to check my phone. And that way I don't lose points. I don't have a little, dip in my graph. It's like, okay, cool. That's my cycle. And we allow you to, click and modify your Pomodoro timer to be like, does everyone know what a Pomodoro timer is? Should we talk about that?
Sure. Go.
Okay. Anyway, Italian guy who came up with this idea of there's a natural rhythm of how you can work in a productive and healthy way. And he used a kitchen timer shaped like a tomato, which is called Pomodoro in Italian. And you would set it for 25 minutes, work, set it for 5 minutes, screw around, do whatever, set it for 25, and do this cycle. And then every couple hours, take a longer break, right? So it's actually a really great, simple way to be like, oh, I need to remind myself every 25 minutes or whatever. For me, it's like 40 something. Just stand up, go get a glass of water, go, stretch, breathe, So we built that. That's the heart. When you open Sukha, that is the center thing in your screen is a Pomodoro timer with a button that says play. And when you come up on your break, we suggest some options for you. Like, hey man, here are a couple of videos of stretching. Here are some breathing videos. You get points if you go get water, or you go for a walk, you get points on the honor system because we can't actually watch you go for a walk, but we trust, So we want to encourage that thing of like, how can this be a repeatable, healthy practice and get out of the hustle culture of, if you're not sleeping under your desk at 2 a.m., like you're not really in it.
Preach.
Yeah.
I have a final question for you, but before then,
final.
Thank you. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to create an app that actually helps people, and you didn't have to give a shit. There's a lot of different, really.
True. Yeah.
Really. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make money and build things and do stuff. So it's really cool to connect with folks who are thinking about humanity. And like you said earlier at the beginning, how do you leave something that creates legacy and matters? So super badass.
That's very nice of you to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Yeah. I believe people can get 7 days free. Is that right?
Yep.
To try out? Yeah. That'll
and
be
no credit card. We didn't want to be one of those like super shady, like if you don't cancel, we're going to bill you. We're just like, you know what? If you love it, sign up. If you don't, thanks for playing.
That'll be linked up in the show notes. Is there anything else to point listeners to?
If anyone has any questions about anything I said, they're welcome to email me. I'll happily, if they're like, tell me more, what should I read? What's this book with the Hungarian dude? Like, happy to reply. So you can put my email in the show notes if you want.
I'll do that. Very last question. What is something in your life that you are deeply questioning right now that you do not have the answer to? It can be something very small. It could be something deep AF. But what's been on your mind lately that you have a big question
on my mind is, as you know, a month from yesterday, I'm going to have a son. And so many friends with kids have weighed in with like, oh, here's what you need to know. Or here's things. And I know no matter how much I've been reading the books and talking to friends, I know there's going to be that thing where it's like, wow, I never really thought about this part. So I've been thinking about that a lot, going like, what's the surprise where a weekend I'm like, no one mentioned this. So we'll see. It's going to be a journey.
It'll be every day. It'll be every freaking day.
You're right.
Yeah. Steven, thank you for your time today. This was awesome.
It's so fun. Thank you for having me.